Remember when we first met John McClane? Argyle picked him up from the plane and took him down the Nakatomi Tower at the Christmas party. And the terrorists were overzealous, but it was sweet when they killed Ellis. And with a little help from Alan, John McClane kicked ass.
Welcome back to Chat the Movies, the podcast where we answer the question, were the movies we loved when we were growing up really that good? Have you ever caught yourself thinking, why don't they make movies like they used to? Can you still remember spending your Friday night searching for the perfect movie rental Blockbuster Video? Do you know what Blockbuster Video is? If you answered yes, and this is the podcast for you, I am one of your hosts, Gene Lyons, and alongside me is my co-host, Big D, Dick Ebert.
Bonjour, scum.
Each week, we take a look back in time, decide if our favorite films still hold up. The movies we cover are chosen by you, the listeners, who generously commission the films you love. If you'd like to see all the movies we have covered, will cover, and want to choose one for yourself, please visit shatpod.com and have a look. At the end of each podcast, we'll provide you, the audience, with the number of wipes each movie takes to get off your respective butts. So thank you so much for listening. If you have not already, hit that subscribe button and share with a friend. It's how we help the podcast grow. Additionally, subscribe to our sister podcast, Shat on TV. Review TV series such as Westworld, Taboo, American Gods, Game of Thrones, True Detective, Lovecraft Country, and Watchmen. Find all that information and past episodes at shatpod.com/TV. And finally, if you'd like to hang out with us live, follow us on YouTube at Shat the Movies, or join us on Twitch at shatpod.com/Twitch, where we play video games, host watch parties, and edit this podcast live. All that being said, Big D, what movie are you reviewing today?
Gene, in addition to the great things you listed, YouTube, Twitch, the live streams, the video games, one of the great ways we interact with our listeners and the community that we've built was set up by one of our great listeners, Hot Sauce Steve, who created a football league for the NFL, Premier, NBA, which I think he stopped. Been doing it for years. A lot of fun. I do it. We get a group of people together, and it's fun to kind of mix all the worlds. So last year's winner, John, who won the NFL version of the Fantasy Football League, chose a film that's very dangerous. Dangerous for multiple reasons. Dangerous because it's a Mel Brooks film. That history has been problematic with me in this podcast. And also it goes back to the very edge of our window, and it goes back to 1981. But I was willing to do it because he won the league. So John chose the 1981 comedy Mel Brooks classic, History of the World Part 1.
And fantasy football champ John writes in, hello, Shatsters. Big thank you to Hot Sauce Steve and Big D for letting me join and play in their fantasy football league. As the champ this year, I'd like to commission the Mel Brooks classic History of the World Part 1. Looking forward to another great episode, and keep on chatting. The first time I came across a Shat crew was during Westworld, and I was immediately hooked. The dialogue and discussions were entertaining, thought-provoking, and fun. After that first season, I binge-consumed everything you guys put out. Game of Thrones, Watchmen, True Detective, Lovecraft Country, and yes, even American Gods. Thank you, John. I had all the Shat on TV before even venturing into the movie world. You all truly made me feel like one of the crew who was along for the ride. I love that you guys are authentically you. I could easily relate to the banter, the nonsense, the camaraderie, and the enlightenment. Thank you for giving me this opportunity to beat everyone in fantasy football, and cheers to another great season. John. Well, John, cheers to you for winning fantasy football. I am struggling this year in Fantasy Premier League. I made the mistake of sharing the link to our Fantasy Premier League on the Shat the Movies Facebook, and 20 guys just showed up out of nowhere and started blasting away at the wins. And so I've sunk below mid-table. It's been rough. Thankfully, Arsenal is doing a little better than I am.
Are you going to be relegated to the NFL version next year? Is that how it works?
Jeez, I hope not. I am in a pick'em pool. My nephew, who is a college baseball player at a D3 school that has such a reputable program that they ask their uncles for $30 to get in a pick'em pool to support the baseball team. I feel like it's Little League all over again. Had me go in a pick'em league, and out of my family, I'm the last one still standing. I hope I didn't jinx it this week. I've got the Jags. So I hope things go okay. Well, History of the World Part 1 is a 1981 comedy written, produced, and directed by Mel Brooks. He also stars in the film, much to Big D's chagrin, playing 5 roles among a large ensemble cast featuring Sid Caesar, Shecky Green, Charlie Callis, Ron Carey, Dom DeLuise, Madeline Kahn, Harvey Korman, Cloris Leachman, Spike Milligan, and Gregory Hines in his film debut. The film also has cameo appearances by Royce D. Applegate, B. Arthur, Nigel Hawthorne, Hugh Hefner, John Hurt, Phil Leeds, Barry Levinson, Jackie Mason, Paul Mazursky, Andrew Sachs, and Henny Youngman, among others. Orson Welles narrates each story. The film's title is a play on History of the World by Sir Walter Raleigh, which was intended to be published in several volumes, but only the first was completed. However, 4 decades later, Hulu announced the limited series History of the World Part 2, which premiered on March 6th of this year. So, Big D, we always ask where you were and what your memories are of the movie. This week, it is Mel Brooks' History of the World Part 1. My older cousin, Pej, who you finally got to meet at the wedding, he made sure that Mel Brooks movies were on regular rotation in our household during my childhood. Blazing Saddles and Spaceballs were our favorites, but History of the World got its fair share of plays. And it's actually weird to think about now as a child. My first concept historically of things like the French Revolution and the Spanish Inquisition and the Roman Empire were in a comedy, this comedy, and not a classroom.
See, Gene, it's great that we can prove that people can come together no matter their differences. That Pej, an Iranian American, an immigrant, had to really push a Jewish New York comedian on you to make sure that you had a full, rounded repertoire of experiences. So I think that's very sweet of him. I saw this, it had to have been early 80s, but it's been at least 25 years since I've seen it, more than just clips. I was under 10, and this falls into that caveman window where I could remember bits and pieces of it. I thought this was funny as shit. I remembered surprisingly more lines than I probably should. I can't remember what I did last week half the time, or things I learned in college, or things with my job, but I could remember a hot poker in the ass. I could remember a snake up my ass. I can remember all these crazy lines in the movie, things that happened. And I thought this was funny. I remember really liking the historical situations and the satire. But I wanted to be safe because after my experience with Spaceballs went horribly wrong. And I always assumed that my score was so rough because at the time, Roger and I had been having problems behind the mic, where he hadn't been paying attention. I felt he was shitting on movies that I liked punitively. So me being the petty bitch that I was then, I decided to be petty back. And my aggressive feelings towards him came out, so that simmering tensions below the surface. So I always assumed that was what it was. But when I came and watched the History of the World, I started to realize it wasn't the fight with Roger. It just might be that Mel Brooks and his comedies are not meant for me.
I really thought, Big D, that combat engineers had more loyalty to one another. Mel Brooks goes out there. He serves in World War II in the 78th Infantry, going out there clearing mines, just like you should have been doing after 9/11, and all you do is shit on his movies.
A lot of mines in lower Manhattan. A lot.
Fellow New Yorker.
I don't know. It's just his comedy. I love the man. I respect him. Thank you for your service, Mel Brooks. Thank you. If he wants to go visit and set up some wreaths in some of the national cemeteries, I'll do that with him. But I don't want to watch a stand-up routine with him in costumes and him using play on words. It's just not for me.
Despite your feelings about History of the World, I do encourage you to go back and rewatch Spaceballs. I do think that score had something to do with Roger because it is a considerably better movie. But on to John's commission. It is time we did Mel Brooks' History of the World, Part 1. Let's roll the trailer.
From the naked dawn of man to the magnificence of the Bible.
The Lord Jehovah has given unto you these 10 commandments.
From the glory that was Rome to the dark evils of the Spanish Inquisition.
For now begins the Inquisition.
To the French Revolution with its squalor and its splendor.
The peasants may grow violent.
They are my people. I am their sovereign. I love them. Pull!
History of the World, Part 1, starring...
It's good to be the king.
More women! More wine! More!
And submit to the king. Lustful one.
Others let off!
Chip, you're beautiful.
Shove it.
Let's end this meeting on a high note.
Hey, what country you from?
Ethiopia.
What part?
On 25th Street. Oh,
I'm Miriam. I'm a Vestal Virgin.
I'm really sorry to hear that.
Should have been here over 30 grains ago.
Please ravage me.
Gee, I just ate.
Drama.
Do you require a blindfold?
None.
Have you any last words?
None.
Test the guillotine.
Holy
Action.
Where you going?
I don't know.
Romance.
Say when?
8:30.
Spectacle.
The Inquisition. What a show. We know you're wishing that we'd go away. But the Inquisition's here and it's here to stay.
Mel Brooks, History of the World, Part 1. 10 million years in the making.
We start with the Stone Age and the Old Testament. Cavemen, including Sid Caesar, depict the invention of fire, the first artist, the first marriages, primitive weapons, and the first funerals. Also depicted are early attempts at comedy and music. Moses, played by Mel Brooks, comes down from Mount Sinai carrying 3 stone tablets, having received the law from God, which is the voice of an uncredited Carl Reiner. Moses drops one of the tablets, which shatters, and he corrects his proclamation from 15 commandments to 10. This is why we do the podcast. This opening scene, after 4 decades of exposure to history of the world, from my childhood until now, this is the first time I noticed that the first humans who stand up from being apes, they stand up upright, they immediately start jerking off. As a kid, I didn't know what the fuck that was. I didn't understand it, but now it is a beautiful testament to masturbation. Yes, it is crass, but it's also very true. I started thinking about it like, dude, if I had no job, no podcasts, no motorcycles, pants hadn't even been invented yet, what do you think a guy's going to do? I am willing to bet that cavemen masturbated no less than 16 hours a day.
Yeah, I like they're just laying on the ground afterwards, like, and they're not moving. But you have to admit that there's 2 different kinds of jerking off for guys. I can't get into women's minds, and I was going to have you ask Sarah, but I just decided not to. And maybe our female listeners will write in. But for guys, there's 2 different kinds of jerking off. There's the, hey, I got to bust a nut. I just got to get this done. It's like I got to put gas in the car. I got to change the oil in the car. I got to do something, right? You're just doing it to do it. And then there's the nice, take your time. You got the lotion. You set up the magazine or the phone, and you get to the website. Come on, our listeners are over 50, right? So, you're setting it up. You're getting involved. You're going to find the scene on the phone. It's more involved, right? We got a safe place. You're not going to be disturbed. And I feel guys get a bad rep for jerking off. You just are playing into the stereotype. It's a primal need. It's not our fault. It's hormonally driven. We give women a pass when their hormones are, well, sorry, it's that time of the month, or I have PMS. Why are we the butt of the joke? Because we have similar hormones.
I think this is a time when Stephanie in Knoxville would come in really handy, no pun intended, to help us out with this discussion. But I think you're absolutely right. I never really thought about it, but it does really kind of fall into the 2 categories. I do wonder, though, when you're in a committed relationship or married like we are, if that second scenario, it doesn't really apply, right? You're only basically now just a scenario 1 kind of guy.
No, there's always going to be scenario 2.
Really?
Yes, because you're mixing in other constraints. The getting it done, you think it's just the utilitarian, flip the switch, I got to remove these these hormones from my body to clear my head. No, you're still going to sometimes want that little more romantic moment. That you want the me time, the Gene time.
I just don't know that I would ever go to like a safe place, set up a phone or a magazine. Are you lighting candles? Are you in a bubble bath? What's going on here?
Roger used to light candles, and that was the vision I thought. But I'm just saying, like you find a safe place, somewhere where it's not just like, hey, I'm going to go rub one out. It's actually jerking off. So I think guys out there, don't be embarrassed.
Does this then imply that in scenario 1, you're doing it in dangerous places?
Theoretically, it could be the shower. You could be stumbled upon.
How is the shower dangerous?
Because I have a 7-year-old.
Oh.
Not that she's like, hey, daddy, let me open up the door. But that's like a situation where there's traffic in and out of the bathroom. We have house guests and stuff like that, you know.
It is startlingly awkward when you're taking care of things and a dog jumps on the bed. It's like, no.
Yeah, that
kills the mood.
That's very dangerous.
Yeah, you move on to scenario 2 in that.
Yeah, you move on to, but now going back to the movie here. For all my complaints about Spaceballs, it knew what it was. It was a parody of Star Wars. Yes, there was other spoofs involved. You have the chest burster and the diner that's aliens. But History of the World Part 1, it never entirely decides what it wants to be, what it's going to choose to do. Instead, it's a mashup of parodies. Everything is spoofed here, from the Stone Ages, the Old Testament, the Roman Empire, the Spanish Inquisition. You get to the French Revolution. There are some sections that are mercifully short. The caveman scenes in the beginning, you hint at it. Those ones could have been tedious. Then we have the ones that are tediously long that we said, please, could you have edited this? We're in the Roman Empire, what it seems like for 2/3 of the film. Then there are moments of brilliance that they never explore or just come and go. And I'm left there like, please, where's more Jesus? Where's more Moses? Where's more Mount Sinai? These are the moments. And the movie was just up and down, long and short, and all over the place.
I mean, Mel Brooks is notorious for having uneven films, but I think History of the World knows exactly what it wants to be. It's a movie that takes the timeline of humanity from the dawn of man to the French Revolution, and it just makes fun of a few eras. I don't understand what's wrong with that.
I'm saying there was no even tempo to it. You're in the creation for 30 seconds. Then we go to Rome for an hour. Then we go to the Inquisition for a 20-minute dance number. There's no flow to the film. There's no string throughout the entire film that kept me hooked. I kind of was just sitting there waiting for something to happen, didn't know when I was going to leave. But those moments that worked for me, Gene, you notice they have one thing in common. They're all religious. I love the religious comedy. You got Moses dropping the tablet. It's fantastic. Moses getting robbed and parting the Red Sea. You have the Last Supper. They're asking, is this going to be separate checks? Judas. Oh, and looks like he's getting outed. That shit worked for me. And I was always puzzled why. Religion and religious people seem to think that their faith is above comedy and satire. All the major religions, and I'm not going to single out one, are extremely thin-skinned. You publish a cartoon about the prophet, you're going to get death threats. You make a show about a Christian televangelist in South Carolina, we're going to take your rebates and your tax credits. You can't make jokes. Why do I have to respect your religion if I think it's funny? Why? I think anything should be open to satire, with the exception, the caveat, no children, no like violence against children or violent crime. Anything else, disease, sexuality, anything I think should be open.
John, if you're listening to this on the way to church, I sincerely apologize. Big D, I admit I laughed at Da Vinci's "Everybody that want to be in the picture, get up and go to the other side of the table," which mocks religion, art, and Italians. But I don't know where I sit on this one, because that game that you just mentioned could be played a lot of ways, right? It's okay in this instance, but let's say, for instance, Christian nationalists are making fun of Hindus, Muslims, and Jews. Is that okay?
Yes. It's your personal belief. To me, all religions are funny. You got a spirit up in the clouds who's either going to give you immortal life, who's sitting there in judgment or sacrificed his son, or somebody coming from the planet Quolo who landed in the Midwest on a spaceship. All the religions are somewhat laughable to me. So, yeah, I think you should be able to. Why?
Like an edgelord, Big D.
If you told me Santa was real, spoiler alert, and you believed he was real, and I thought you were ridiculous, should I have to respect your belief in Santa?
No, not at all. I welcome Edgelord Dick Ebert. I think it's great.
Okay. And I change it. I do respect you. I'm not saying that I don't respect the major religions and whatever you choose. I'm just saying that they should not be protected from comedy. And that shit here works. And I could feel Mel kind of holding back, like, can I do more Christianity jokes? Hey, the Christians are so poor, they can only afford one God. I wanted more of that shit. Push the boundary.
Well, we move on to the Roman Empire, where Comicus, also played by Mel Brooks, who is a stand-up philosopher, lands a gig at Caesar's palace. En route, he meets and falls in love with Vestal virgin Miriam and befriends an enslaved Ethiopian named Josephus, played by Gregory Hines, in his film debut. As Comicus performs for Emperor Nero, played by Dom DeLuise, Josephus absent-mindedly pours a jug of wine into Nero's lap, and they are ordered to fight to the death. Instead, Comicus and Josephus fight their way out of the palace, assisted by Miriam and Empress Nympho, played by Madeline Kahn. Comicus, Josephus, and Comicus's agent Swiftus are found hiding in Nympho's palace, posing as eunuch guards. They escape soldiers led by Marcus Vindictus, played by Shecky Green, in a cart pulled by a horse named Miracle.
Miracle, yeah. So, Gene, Mel Brooks had the entire history of the world to choose from when he was making this plot, when he was writing this story. And the best he could come up with were these 5 moments. Have you watched the television show at all?
I have not.
I've not either. I'm going to give it a shot, but I went and looked it up, and it seems like they only did 1 season so far. I think they've greenlit a second. Looking at the descriptions of the episode, it looks like they jump around the world from Shakespeare to Marco Polo to General Grant to Jesus again. It looks like it goes around Middle Eastern peace. It looks like they're jumping around a lot. I felt like this was uninspired and unimaginative. Why are these the 5 moments that you pick? Why didn't you try to do more smaller moments? I think if you diversified your portfolio and you kept moving around and you had the skits, like your finances, Gene, I'm sure Chad's taught you. You don't put all your jokes in Rome. You don't put all your jokes, in the French Revolution. I would have rather had more quicker, shorter skits that would have guaranteed some will hit, some will fail, but overall you'd have more laughs.
I think spending a lot of time in France and particularly Rome was part of the joke, though. They were clearly recycling sets and costumes from like old Hollywood to the point of using Caesar's Palace Casino in Las Vegas as the exterior shot for the Palace of Emperor Caesar. I groaned, but it was a good groan. I appreciated the creativity and just how hammy it was. And that differs from a movie like, say, Airplane, because we sometimes hear that we're too easily offended or that we're too PC, particularly me. They never come after you. So I'm glad that History of the World came along to help me clarify my stance on comedy. The Ethiopian shim sham that Gregory Hines is doing, that shit is funny. Or Comicus and Caesar referring to a gay character as faggot. That is funny because the entire cast is diverse. This isn't being told from the prism or the lens of a white narrator, right? The story is being told from a minority viewpoint. Everyone who is on screen in this movie is a woman, a racial minority, gay, fucking weird, or a combination of those things. But more importantly than any of that is all the things I just mentioned, the Ethiopian shim sham and calling a gay character faggot. It's funny. They do it in a funny way. And perhaps, Big D, the History of the World is my Airplane. Like, you talked in that review about the machine gun of jokes coming your way. And I certainly felt that in History of the World. Like, just as I was weighing whether to laugh at a setup, the punchline was hit and I couldn't help myself but laugh. Even Sarah, who was listening from the kitchen, not even watching the screen, she would occasionally let loose aha. My biggest laugh of the entire movie is that little dick rub that Caesar gives the court spokesman when he enters the throne. How do you not laugh at that? That's brilliant.
That did not seem like that was planned.
I did a rewind. I watched it 5 times. That shit seems genuine. That's Dom DeLuise just being a devil.
Yeah, it's just getting hit in the balls. Guys, another besides jerking off, guys have a tendency to do that sometimes. A little dick punch.
Oh, the King Bee is the king of it.
He hasn't gotten me yet.
Oh, he got me during the wedding photos. Moving on, we go to Judea and the Spanish Inquisition. Comicus, Miriam, Josephus, and Swiftus sail to Judea, where Comicus blunders into a private room where Jesus, played by John Hurt, is having the Last Supper with his disciples. Leonardo da Vinci arrives to paint the group's portrait. The film shifts to a Spanish Inquisition song and dance sequence featuring Brooks as the infamous Torquemada, using torture methods including the auto de fe, a spinning Iron Maiden, and nuns performing an aquatic ballet. Jackie Mason and Ronnie Graham supply cameos as Jewish torture victims.
I'm really trying, Gene. I'm trying to stay positive on this film, and I'm trying to look beyond my internal bias. But, man, Mel loves to do multiple characters.
Yeah.
You said he does 5 in this. He does multiple in his other ones. I don't know why you would do that unless you were choosing to bring something new to the movie. I can understand. Let's think back to other people. Like Eddie Murphy does The Nutty Professor. It's kind of funny. I think all of them are unique characters, a little different. Or you got Michael J. Fox, Back to the Future franchise. That works because he's playing different members of his family. Now we go to the little darker side, the ones that didn't work as well. You got Mike Myers. He tried this same trick in every fucking movie. We hated So I Married an Axe Murderer. He's always playing some Scottish character or some Irish character. He's always Fat Bastard or somewhere in between Mike Myers and Fat Bastard. It's bad, and it's usually terrible. And we decided somewhere along the lines that maybe Mike Myers was better off in small doses, that we thought in the Wayne's World, Dana Carvey balanced him out. When you put Mike Myers on his own, it's too much Mike Myers. And then Mike Myers says, hey, let's get Mike Myers with Mike Myers on top, and more Mike Myers, and another serving of Mike Myers, and a side order of Mike Myers. And I think Mel Brooks has a tendency to do that. Instead of him being there and being Moses, he has to be the main character through that entire film. And it's a bit much because every single character, there's no differentiation. Let's just say if you're Comicus, you are an old crotchety Jew. If you are Moses, you're an old crotchety Jew. Okay, that one works. If you got any of the other ones, it's the same person every time.
Do you think Piss Boy Jacques was an old crotchety Jew?
In some way, yes. I'll get that later. The coin. Yes, he's an old crotchety Jew.
It's going to be Big D's costume this Halloween. I think Big D, at the risk of sounding like a Mel Brooks apologist, I think it's a running gag with him. Like, he's the star of his own productions and therefore a character unto himself. And there's this self-aware narcissism with like a hint of egomania that's part of the joke. As the producer, he always gets girls. You notice that in Spaceballs, in History of the World, he's always getting girls. He always gets cool roles, and he gets a right to be Mel Brooks. As Louis XVI would say, it's good to be the king.
This is your airplane.
This is my airplane.
And I always wonder, are you playing a mind game with us? Is this some kind of experiment where you're trying to flip the roles to test the audience after what happened?
No, absolutely not. I don't think this was a great movie.
But you laughed. You asked me this with airplane.
I laughed.
You laughed.
Yeah.
Okay.
But you know what? I'm reasonable enough to laugh and still not give a great wipe score, unlike some folks.
Okay, so I'm going to measure our laughs here. We're going to try to quantify it. You talked about the cast in the intro. The cast is great. You had giant stars at the time who were willing to come on and do cameo roles here. You had Orson Welles, who's the voice of the narrator. You had somebody like Hugh Hefner to come in to be in 15 seconds. You had Henny Youngman. You had comedic royalty in this. And there's a lot of the standout performances for me are in those tiny moments. You got Mel running through, doing his Mel Brooks stuff, just like Mike Myers does. But the other pieces to me are the main one. Like you have Harvey Korman playing Count de Mont and the piss bucket. He is fantastic. You got Madeline Kahn playing the Empress Nymph. She got me the biggest laugh in this entire movie, where she is asking, she's going to try to take on Josephus as one of her assistants.
A litter bearer.
And she asks, yes. And she asks, she says, hey, driver, do we have any openings at this time? And the whole crowd goes, ooh. Like joking at her coffin about yes, those little moments. Get on the bandwagon, pipe the shit right out of your house. All those little things were so much better than the big set pieces. I wish there was more of that.
I do think, Big D, that if you don't like Mel Brooks in this movie, then he's just certainly not for you, because this is Mel Brooks at the top of his game. The Spanish Inquisition scene specifically, I consider the absolute peak of Mel Brooks' on-screen performance. Not talking about his production necessarily, but his on-screen performance. He's dancing, he's singing, his timing is just dynamite in this scene. And that the little part where they go, oughta de fe, what's oughta de fe? And he delivers it's what you ought to not do, but you do anyway. It's one of the greatest musical lines I think I've ever heard. He made the Spanish Inquisition funny. That is a talent.
Okay, so the oughta de fe. You like his play with words?
Yeah.
You like the don't get saucy with me, Bernays? You like that?
No. But making a joke about the oughta de fe, it's so niche. It's so clever.
Or the piso. Oui. Okay, over here. It's terrible. It's lazy. It's unfunny. I did laugh, though, at when he tries to say, hey, I want Novocaine before I'm going to get killed.
Oh, that's the joke they got you?
Yeah, wasn't it?
I'll wait.
I'll wait. That one I gave a little pass. But you're right. The dance number here, it's the fucking movie. It's got uneven pacing. It's disjointed. It's going nowhere. It is a slow train wreck. But there's only one thing that got me back on board. It's more religious-based humor. Of course, I'm like, thank you. Let's mock the religions. I don't see this enough. And for as much as I dislike Mel Brooks and his humor and his play on words and his don't get saucy, Brene, oh, God, I hate it. I do give him credit that he was willing to take what historians estimate as 150,000 people persecuted and 5,000 killed in the Spanish Inquisition. He says, you know what? I think we need to get synchronized swimmers. We need to get a spinning menorah. We need to go out there and do a full balls to the wall musical number like old Hollywood. And fuck it. I got to admire that.
I didn't get the nun joke until this viewing. I was like, oh my God, it's water torture. That is hilarious. And the little bubble that comes up from the Jews is, oi, come on.
Do you think the Holocaust would be out of bounds for Mel?
No. But he has a right to make those jokes as a part of a persecuted race.
I understand he has the right. But just like I don't know that I would feel comfortable doing like a 9/11 joke. I know you can. I know you can make Holocaust jokes. I already said that, but I'm just questioning whether he would have the courage to do a Holocaust dance number.
Now, when you say the courage to do it, does it mean that it's something that you would like to see and you're hoping someone will step up to the plate and take a swing at that pitch?
I don't know. I've done a little fanfic for Hitler on Ice on what that might be like, but I don't say that I want to see it, but there is a creative, like a courage that it takes to do some things that you feel strong enough. I don't feel strongly enough about the Holocaust to do it.
No.
But I also didn't feel that way about the Spanish Inquisition.
Also no.
But I respect it.
Well, from there we move on to the French Revolution. In her Paris tavern, Madame Defarge, played by Cloris Leachman, incites a mob to plot the French Revolution. Meanwhile, King Louis of France, also played by Mel Brooks, is warned by his advisor, Count de Monet, played by Harvey Korman, that the peasants do not think he likes them. Mademoiselle Rimbaud asks King Louis to free her father from the Bastille, which she agrees to only if she will have sex with him that night. De Monet persuades King Louis to go into hiding, and Piss Boy Jacques, also played by Mel Brooks, is chosen to impersonate the king as a decoy. Jacques pardons Monsieur Rimbaud without requiring sexual favors, but peasants burst in the room and take Jacques to the guillotine. Josephus inexplicably arrives in the cart pulled by Miracle, and they all escape, riding toward a mountain carved with the words, "The End." Now, this is where I'm going to get real about this movie, okay?
Do it.
It drags at this point. The French Revolution is it's a laughless slog. In contrast to the Roman Empire segment of the movie, it just really feels like it drags, which surprised me because this seems like a target-rich environment for parody and performance. You got two major works of art that you could work with here, Les Mis and Tale of Two Cities. There's a lot to work with there. And instead, it's 20 minutes of horny boob jokes, sexual pressure, and I was so relieved when Gregory Hines, who is utterly charming in this movie, arrived and saved it.
Yeah, there's only so much you can do with a piss bucket. And how many times you can look at the camera and say it's good to be the king. I feel like there must have been so much more filmed. And they had to pare it down. And there's some bastardization of a plot and of a story that I have to believe is there. There has to be somewhere out there in the annals, in the archives of Hollywood of what this could have been, whether it was a vision of a Spartacus or, Cleopatra, something grand and expansive. And they couldn't do it. And again, maybe I'm writing fanfic here. And they couldn't do it, that it fell short of the grand vision because these pieces feel cobbled together.
Yeah, and before anybody says, well, it was a 1981 movie, we got to remember that Blazing Saddles came out in 1974, and it is 100 times funnier than this movie. Similar production, similar casting. And so you've got they already had a template for something that could work. So History of the World, I think, falls short of that measure. And so that you can't use the excuse of time passing, right? It's not that 40 years have gone by. Is that it's genuinely a movie that doesn't really live up to its billing. And speaking of billings, we move on to the coming attractions, the final part of the movie. At the end of the film, we get a mock teaser trailer for History of the World Part 2 coming soon. The trailer is narrated by Mel Brooks, surprise, and shows clips of segments titled Hitler on Ice, A Viking Funeral, and Jews in Space.
So the mock trailers left me wondering, and for anyone out there wonders, you know why they call them trailers, Gene? You, being a movie historian and a podcaster, must know.
I'm guessing because it came after the movie?
That is correct.
Hey.
Trailers used to follow the movie. So that's why here we get these trailers trailing the film. And I can't help, Gina, but imagine, what would Hitler's life be if we could give it the entire Ice Capades treatment?
I know what Ice Capades is, but I've never been. I have been to Disney on Ice.
Very similar. So
I bought many flashlights.
So you figure after like the Olympics, what do Olympic ice skaters do? Figure skaters. There's no next level. Porn? Did you say porn?
Yeah, I mean, isn't that what they...
I think that would be interesting. It would be.
I feel like that's going to be the new thing. Like, athletes retire from athletics. They're built. They look good. They do porn.
Yeah, but you'd have to do it in your, like, so it's almost like the Body Issue on ESPN. I don't want those blades around, like sex scenes with those ice skates. That's dangerous.
I'm not saying they're doing ice porn. I'm saying they just do porn.
I was thinking it'd be a scene like you have a couple, they're out there practicing their spins and their landings. No. And one thing last, she pulls a muscle, she falls over. He comes to console her and massage her thigh. And I was thinking that would lead that way.
I'm talking about ice skaters doing porn, not ice skating porn.
Gotcha, like Nancy Kerrigan, but a little bit younger.
Thank you.
Gotcha.
More Tanya Harding, probably.
Okay. Oh, I think she probably had a film.
That's what I'm talking about.
I've never seen it, but
Jesus.
Okay, so the Ice Capade treatment, you get like, now let's take Hitler's life, his rise to power, maybe dabble in the Holocaust, and then we throw in some jumps, maybe some triple lutzes, I think they're called, some spins, some sequin outfits. I think it could be glorious.
I think they did it in History of the World Part 2, Hitler on Ice.
Oh, I don't want to be disappointed.
I know Wanda Sykes is in it. Nicholas Kroll is in it, and he can't. From what I've heard, he can't even save it. I like Nick Kroll, but Wanda Sykes is it's.
No, Wanda. I'd rather watch Mel Brooks than Wanda Sykes.
Wow. Well, you took a liking to Hitler on Ice. For me, it was Jews in Space, and I understand that Jews in Space, which is funny just to say, isn't what people generally have in mind when they talk about representation, right? We're talking about representation in film. You're not thinking Jews in Space. But I really think, and I'm not trying to be funny here, I really think that little bits like this matter. Jews, if you think about it, they're almost always depicted as victims in film. They're either Holocaust survivors, or even when they're not, even if it's in modern day, they're going to be like the weakling character that needs to be saved by some sort of a superhero or the cool kid at school. They play bookish accountant or skinny guy that just is there to crack jokes and count money. But not these Jews. Not the Jews in space.
No.
They're flying around in space. They're blasting Gentiles out of the stars. They're high-fiving. These guys, Jews in space, the Bear Jew from Inglourious Bastards, Superman, they're all important figures in showing Jewish might and Jewish pride. And even if it's a totally silly movie, I like that Mel Brooks is presenting them in this way, because I was like rooting for the Jews in space. I'm like, fuck yeah, go out there in your Star of David spaceships and fuck shit up.
No, 100%. And for people out there who poo-poo inclusion, you've never experienced it firsthand. If you've ever had anyone who you're a friend or family or loved one who has that moment for the first time where they see themselves. I had a friend of the family with Encanto, where the little girl, for the first time, she looked at the screen and actually said, "That's me." And I was moved. As a white dude, I see myself in everything. I'm everywhere. I can see myself as an astronaut. I can see myself as a doctor. I can see myself as a police officer. I could see myself in the Third Reich in one of like these World War II movies. I would fit any of those.
Ice skating porn.
So I think don't ever poo-poo it, because if you've never had the ability to watch a child for the first time identify with a character, it was moving. And I think at different points, 6 years ago, I would have thought, fuck Gene, you're being a social justice warrior. I think you're right on to give that Jewish kid, even for a moment, to think I could be a badass. I could fuck shit up.
In space.
I could be in space. Yeah, I could beat Nazis with a bat. I could do it. Now, whether or not they actually do it, that's another story, but he could believe anything is possible.
Yeah, it's like the appeal of World Cup. When Iran qualifies for World Cup, I know they're not going to win the World Cup. When the U.S. qualifies for World Cup, I know they're not going to win the World Cup, but you're looking at it, you're like, we're there, man. We matter. We're on the stage at least. And then we get our asses kicked horribly. Well, now is the time in the podcast where we give our Shat score for Mel Brooks' History of the World, Part 1. The Shat score is our way of telling you how many wipes this movie takes to get out for respective butts. 0 wipes is a perfect movie. It's when you can pipe the shit right out of your house. And 5 wipes is an absolute disaster movie. It's when they shove a living snake up your ass. Big D, we'll start with you. What is your wipe score for Mel Brooks' History of the World, Part 1?
This movie is best digested as a series of highlight clips on memes or YouTube. The few moments that everyone remembers, but that does not make up for the painful pace. I think there is a disastrous story structure. Somewhere in there, there was probably a larger narrative that would have been envisioned to go multiple films. It feels almost to me as if you had a VHS best of SNL tape, but they couldn't put the Wayne's World or like the Church Lady, all the A skits. They were stuck with the B skits. So this feels like a B skit best of VHS tape that is not the best material. So I got to go 3.75 wipes.
I'm absolutely with you on this. And John, I don't mean this to say that this is not a funny movie, because it is a funny movie.
Funny moments. I think there's a difference. There's funny moments.
Yeah. If you took all the laugh out loud moments in this movie and stacked them back to back, you get about maybe 10 minutes of chuckles, right? In a 90-minute movie. The rest is giant marijuana joints, cavemen throwing rocks at each other's feet, and really talented comedians, as you said, Big D, incredible cast, struggling with some fairly weak material and sometimes making it work, which oddly is what doomed History of the World Part 2. I mean, it's been pretty much panned by reviewers. I think it's got like a 75%, approval rating or something like that. I agree with you, Big D, for different reasons. And again, John, I think that this movie made me laugh, but it's not as well put together as, say, a Spaceballs or a Blazing Saddles. I'm right there with you, Big D, 3 3/4 wipes. And so that gives us a unanimous score of 3.75 wipes for Mel Brooks' History of the World, Part 1.
So, Gene, before we get to score here, you're right. It is a 75 on tomato score for the critics. It is a 35 from the audience. So I fear that there was some of the critics who are a little weary of coming down hard on it. I think it's got to be worse than we believe. But I will at least go back and watch Hitler on Ice to see what my dream was not made of, to see what it could be. But with a score, Gene, of 3.75 wipes, that now ties this. Wow, I don't know how this always happens. Unbelievable. In the 270 spot, Robin Hood Men in Tights, another comedy, Lady Hawk, and The Ice Pirates. Slightly better than Last Starfighter, GoldenEye, Christmas Story. Slightly worse than Labyrinth, Trading Places, and Jingle All the Way.
Here's the fucked up part, and I can't believe I'm saying this. I think Ice Pirates is more fun.
Oh, definitely more fun.
The aging scene at the end.
The chompers and the eunuchs. There's a lot of scenes that are similar. We have like in the throne room where the eunuchs are trying to hide, and we get the erection joke. Can't believe this didn't come on the podcast, Gene. I still framed Gregory Hines running after he's found with an erection. He has a giant strap-on floppy dildo. As he turns around and runs to the window and jumps out, you can see his floppy dick. That's what Mel was paying attention to. Not the plot, but the floppy dick on the dancer. How that got through. Did you see the dick, or is that just me?
I just like you referred to fucking Gregory Hines' quote, the dancer.
He's quite a talented dancer. He is.
Somebody commissioned White Knights. All right, moving on from Mel Brooks' History of the World Part 1, we have a few emails I'd like to get through. And speaking of fans who found us through TV, we've got an email from Dan writing in about Game of Thrones. He says, I'm just re-listening again. I never did watch the last 2 seasons. I barely got through season 6. This was peak Shat. Game of Thrones and Westworld. I miss the K, B, and KG. I think that's King B and Carrie Gross. I'm disappointed there was never any advertising. It would have been nice to make the pods financially epic so you can maintain the TV podcasts. Lots of love from a very long-time listener. That comes from Dan. Big D, if you could podcast full-time, right? Full-time podcasting, you'd have to do movies and TV, okay? It's all paid for by advertisers, right? Like if I told you right now, quit your day job, you're podcasting full-time, what do I have to pay you to do?
See, that's tough. I think 120.
Yeah, I'd agree with that.
The TV stuff is tough.
Well, if it's your full-time job, though.
Yeah, okay, that's true. Yeah.
What we're saying, Dan, is you can't afford us.
We don't know, Dan. Don't judge Dan. Dan, we could become your personal, piss bucket boys.
Yeah. No, you know how I know that Dan can't afford us is because he's like, hey, it's disappointing that there was never any advertising. He's not saying, hey, let me advertise with you so you can podcast full time.
See, I like to coddle the acorns, Gene. The little acorns. We learned that in the Long Good Friday. You never know what they're going to turn into.
The acorn boys.
They grow.
Thanks, Dan, for writing in. And we appreciate the compliment. Honestly, I'm very, very excited to see the new season of True Detective. And there's a little part of me that aches in the fact that we're not covering it. But at the same time, I know realistically we have so many movies to do. And we really want to get them out for people who've been waiting patiently for them. And I think it would just be a disservice to spend time doing anything other than movies right now.
So, Gene, one of the TV shows I am watching is Foundation, which just finished its 2nd season. And I follow Bald Move. They have great coverage. And I heard one of our listeners, Black Girl Couch. They read one of her emails. So I was like, woo, go Black Girl Couch.
It's cheating on us.
They're okay to cheat with. They're on my what do they call them? Like on my hall pass. You can cheat on us with Bald Move.
Thanks, Dan, for your email. Next up, we have one from Tom about 8 Million Ways to Die. He says, hey, Shat Crew, I've been wanting to commission a movie for years, but could never decide on one before it was picked. I think I finally settled on one that's pretty crazy and suits the show, and I'd love to hear your thoughts on it. Following the commission process, I just want to see if it's appropriate and you're up for it. The movie is 1986's 8 Million Ways to Die, starring Jeff Bridges, Andy Garcia, Rosanna Arquette. I can't find the trailer, only a VHS commercial, but this one blew me away when I first saw it as to how nobody is talking about this. It is a cocaine-fueled mid-'80s action movie with some iconic scenes and performances and some questionable ones, too. The best mix for a Shat film. My score would be 1.5 wipes. I found out that Quentin Tarantino and Roger Avery used to have this on loop in the old video archive store where they worked, and you can definitely tell it's had its influence, especially True Romance. And according to Quentin, the casting of Randy Brooks in Reservoir Dogs was directly responsible. If you're up for it, I'm up for commissioning it. And that comes from Tom.
Wow, but look at the poster here in the cast. How have I not heard of this?
Same.
Screenplay by Oliver Stone, Robert Towne. Oof. The only way this could be like a hidden gem is if it is a mess or there was some legal issue behind its distribution, and that's why you can't find it.
Maybe Dan didn't put enough dollars behind it advertising.
This is too good to be true. There must be something going on here.
So is that a yes?
Oh, of course. This ever since Blood In, Blood Out, you have good stars. You have a film that people are passionate about, even if it's a small audience. There could be something here.
All right, Tom, it's a go. Get in touch with the Big D. Let's make this happen. Next up, we have one from Chris D. And he says, hey, guys, thanks for reading my letter on the air and considering and the band played on. I was going to post a link for anyone who wanted to watch it, as I think it's still a must-see for learning about homophobia, government, bureaucracy, and big pharma/healthcare. But it doesn't look like I can on Facebook. It also has more stars in it than any movie I can think of. I'm still looking to commission a movie, and I'd be happy to do any or all of the following. Last of the Mohicans, which we've now already done. Sideways, and Thief. Please let me know your thoughts. And that comes from Chris. Chris, as you know by now, we've already done Last of the Mohicans. Sideways, I would love to do. I've never seen it. I remember it having so much buzz back in 2004, but unfortunately it is from 2004, so it kind of breaks the rules there on an 80s and 90s podcast. Thief, however, I have never seen, but I love James Caan, and James Caan as a jewel thief, I'm in. I would certainly do that.
Oh, of course.
I mean, it seems like it's got something in the vein of The Long Good Friday, which we both, loved.
Not sure that's accurate, but yeah, James Caan as a thief would be great.
All right, Chris, we're on for that one. And finally, we got a request from Simon in Blighty, our good friend Simon in Blighty, who writes in and says, "Greetings, mighty Shatsters. A cheery hello from Blighty. I discovered your podcast in 2022, so I'm a little late to the Shat party. I've been looking for a podcast that discussed movies from the 80s and 90s era, and I first stumbled upon a show called The VHS Strikes Back. Long story short, this was a couple of British guys who were about 2 years old in the 1980s and whose film knowledge was what they had read on Wikipedia. The two hosts just ripped the shit out of films for cheap gags. It was dreadful. So I kept looking, and then I discovered Shat, and I'm so glad I found you. I really enjoy spending time listening to your banter. Gene, the Persian martial arts hipster. Ash, the Texan twister, who seems to say y'all in every other sentence. And Big D, the ex-military man bear with a soft heart. I don't always agree with your comments, but I respect your informed commentary and the passion you all have for movies. One film that hasn't appeared on your Shat list so far is the 1987 romantic drama Some Kind of Wonderful, starring Eric Stoltz, Mary Stuart Masterson, Leah Thompson, and a glorious Elias Koteas. Although John Hughes didn't direct this film, he did write it, and I would argue it is the best of the Hughes high school dramas. I love this film and return to it every couple of years. I shared it with my two daughters when they were younger, and they love the film as well. Unlike 16 Candles and Pretty in Pink, which have not aged well, I think this movie is still a perfect Friday night movie. I hope Some Kind of Wonderful stands up to Shat scrutiny, and depending on how well it goes, I will have another commission that is a 1980s classic that is sorely missing from the Shat Hall of Fame. Enjoy. And that comes from Simon in English, chap.
Gene, I just had like a flashback, like a little PTSD to my days of just being like unloved and lonely and the high school reject. I remember watching the Some Kind of Wonderful trailer, and again, I don't remember the movie because I don't know that I've seen the whole thing. Like, she's out in the street and she's professing her love to I think it's Eric Stoltz, and he's kind of like blowing her off, and that emptiness and loneliness. I feel that. I've not seen Pretty in Pink or Some Kind of Wonderful because of that. I've avoided this film. I'm willing to go back there, but it's open just a crack in the door of my painful past.
I think we should get some like rosé and just watch it together. I think it'd be a wonderful experience. Just have our hearts melt.
We could do it on the 28th. We could live stream it.
Oh, Christ, no.
Candles.
No.
Come on, we could.
No,
Get some nice box wine.
It won't even be out until like 2025. What are you talking about?
Oh,
you'll probably be living in Arizona by then.
Maybe I was just looking for a reason to have a nice quiet moment. Night.
No, we're throwing a fucking kegger. Come on.
Oh, okay.
And speaking of keggers that might cost you your life, what do we have coming up next week, Big D?
Gene, next week we're going back to a place that you and I both know very well. It is the dark and dirty and dangerous streets of 1970s New York City, when a street gang must travel 30 miles from the north end of the Bronx to their home turf in Coney Island after they are framed for the murder of a respected gang leader. This came out in 1979, directed by Walter Hill. Was not a box office hit, but has developed a huge cult following. And it was commissioned by Carlos M. So thank you, Carlos, for getting us back to NYC. I am excited to revisit this one.
I can dig it. Well, thank you, Carlos, so much for the upcoming commission. Thank you, John, for winning the Shat Fantasy Football League and commissioning Mel Brooks' History of the World Part 1. Thank you to all the commissioners who make this podcast possible. That concludes this week's episode of Shat the Movies. Be sure to follow us on social media, share with a friend. We're on Facebook, Twitter, Snapchat, and Instagram at Shat the Movies. You can email us at host@shatpod.com. Support the podcast by shopping our Amazon affiliate link, buying our merch, or by commissioning your own movie. Find all that information by visiting our website, shatpod.com. Also, check out our sister podcast, Shat on TV, where we review TV series such as Lovecraft Country, Westworld, True Detective, Taboo, American Gods, Game of Thrones, and Watchmen. Find all information on our website, shatpod.com/TV. We're everywhere fine podcasts can be found, including Apple Podcasts, Google Play, Stitcher, and YouTube. Be sure to subscribe. And if you stop by Apple Podcasts, please leave a 5-star review. It helps the podcast grow. On behalf of my co-host, Big D, I'm Gene Lyons. Join us next week for the following movie.
These are the armies of the night.
Can you dig it? Can you dig it?
The Furies. The Boppers. The Hi-Hats. The Lizzies. The Turnbull ACs. The Gramercy Riffs.
Riffs! Yeah!
And these are the Warriors.
We know about the Warriors. They're a heavy outfit.
They're from Coney Island.
Warriors? You guys are the big dudes, huh?
Now they're in the Bronx.
We're going back.
27 miles behind enemy lines.
It's the only choice we got.
Between them and safety stand 20,000 cops and 100,000 sworn enemies.
I want them all. I want all the warriors.
They've got one way out. They've got one chance. They've got one night. The Warriors.